The morning was quiet outside the old brick courthouse in downtown Atlanta. The air carried the smell of roasted beans from a nearby coffee truck. People hurried past in suits and ties, some clutching papers, others rushing to their hearings. Among them stood Angela Brooks, a young black woman in her mid-20s, dressed neatly in a navy blue blazer. Her eyes were tired, but her posture was firm. She held a folder close to her chest. Inside were the final papers for her late brother's case, a case that had haunted her family for years. Angela wasn't rich. She wasn't powerful. But today she was determined. She waited patiently on the courthouse steps, the morning sun brushing her face. That's when two officers walked out of the coffee shop across the street. Officer Mills and Officer Carter. They laughed loudly, holding steaming cups in their hands, swaggering like they owned the place. As they spotted Angela standing alone, they smirked. "Hey, you lost, sweetheart?" Officer Mills asked, his tone laced with mockery. Angela turned slightly. "No, sir. Just waiting for court to open." "Court, huh?" Mills chuckled. "You a defendant or just visiting your man inside?" Carter laughed at the cruel joke, sipping his coffee. Angela clenched her folder tighter but stayed silent. She had seen men like this before, arrogant, bored, looking for someone to humiliate to feel big. "I'm here for my brother's case," she said softly. "Oh, brother's case," Mills repeated, pretending to care. "What did he do? Rob a store? Steal a car?" Angela's jaw tightened. "He didn't do anything wrong. He was shot by police during a stop." That made the laughter stop for half a second. Then Carter muttered, "Oh, great, another one of those." Angela looked down. The coffee truck's steam drifted in the air, and for a moment, everything felt painfully still. Then Mills smirked again and said, "Tell you what, why don't you stop whining about your brother and move along? You're blocking the steps." "I have a right to be here," Angela replied calmly. Mills tilted his cup. "You sure about that?" Before she could move, hot coffee splashed across her blazer, staining her white shirt. Angela gasped, stepping back as the liquid burned her skin. What did you do?" Carter laughed loudly. "Oops! Guess my hand slipped." People nearby froze, some whispering, some taking out phones, but no one stepped forward. Angela stood there, trembling, her clothes soaked, the smell of coffee filling the air. She wanted to scream, but she didn't. Instead, she wiped her shirt, took a deep breath and whispered, "You'll regret this one day." Mills smirked. "Oh yeah? You gonna sue me?" Angela looked straight into his eyes. "No, life will handle it." Then she picked up her folder, turned around, and walked up the courthouse steps, her back straight, her head held high. The officers watched her go, chuckling under their breath. They had no idea that the woman they had just humiliated would soon have power beyond anything they could imagine. Hours passed. Inside the courthouse, the air was tense. Angela sat quietly on the wooden bench, waiting for the hearing to start. Her shirt was still damp, but she ignored it. Every few minutes, she touched the small pendant around her neck, her brother's old dog tag. She whispered, "I'm doing this for you, Marcus." When the clerk finally announced the next case, Angela stood. But before she could take a step, she noticed something, a familiar voice in the hallway. Officer Mills. He was laughing again, chatting with another cop. She overheard him say, "Man, that girl this morning. You should have seen her face when the coffee hit her." Classic. Angela felt a wave of anger rise, but she held it in. She had learned long ago that calm could be sharper than rage. Then the bailiff entered the courtroom. "All rise for the honorable judge." Angela froze when she heard the name. Judge David Marcus. Her breath caught. That name, Marcus, her brother's best friend. She remembered him from childhood, tall, kind, and brilliant. After her brother's death, he had promised to fight for justice. But she hadn't seen him in years. As Judge Marcus entered, everyone stood. His presence filled the room, calm but commanding. He looked across the courtroom, eyes sharp, scanning faces, until his gaze landed on Angela. For a brief moment, his eyes softened. Recognition flashed between them. Then he saw something else. The two officers standing in the corner, laughing quietly, holding empty coffee cups. And in that instant, something in his expression changed. The courtroom buzzed with chatter, papers shuffling, and the occasional cough. But as Judge David Marcus took his seat on the bench, the noise dwindled into a hushed silence. His presence commanded respect, not because of his robe or title, but because of the quiet authority in his eyes. Angela Brooks stepped forward. Her damp blazer clung to her shoulders, her coffee-stained shirt a silent reminder of the morning's humiliation. But she didn't falter. She held her folder tight, her fingers gripping it like a lifeline. The bailiff cleared his throat. "All rise." The crowd obediently stood, though many whispered among themselves. Judge Marcus nodded, scanning the room once more. His gaze settled briefly on the two officers who had humiliated Angela earlier that morning. Their smirks faded instantly as they noticed his piercing eyes. The courtroom clerk called the case, Case 5721, State versus Angela Brooks, petition for wrongful death compensation, in relation to the late Marcus Brooks. Angela's heart raced. This was the moment. This was the chance to honor her brother, to hold those responsible accountable. "Please be seated," Judge Marcus said firmly. His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen injustice and was ready to correct it. As Angela sat down, she felt her pulse in her ears. She looked toward the two officers, Mills and Carter, seated at the prosecution table. Papers neatly stacked, expressions smug at first, but the smugness didn't last long. Judge Marcus began the proceedings. "This court is here to review the wrongful death claim filed by Ms. Angela Brooks against the City Police Department. The events leading to Mr. Marcus Brooks' death are tragic, and we must examine them with clarity and justice." He paused. His gaze swept across the room, lingering on the officers. "The actions of law enforcement are meant to protect citizens, not endanger them. Today we will hear the facts, and this court expects honesty and accountability." Mills shifted in his seat, avoiding Marcus's stare. Carter tried to appear casual, but kept adjusting his tie nervously. Angela cleared her throat and stood. "Your Honor, my brother didn't deserve to die." He was unarmed. He was coming home from work. And yet, because of careless and reckless behavior by the police, he's gone. "I'm here to make sure that no family has to endure what we endured." Judge Marcus nodded slightly. "Continue, Ms. Brooks." She opened her folder and pulled out a set of printed statements, photographs, and medical reports. She placed them carefully on the stand. "These are official records," she said softly but firmly, "showing my brother's condition before, during, and after the incident. The officers involved were aware of his status, yet they failed to act responsibly." The courtroom was silent. Even the murmurs from the public gallery died down. Mills coughed loudly. "Objection, Your Honor. The plaintiff is being dramatic." Judge Marcus didn't flinch. He leaned forward slightly. "Officer Mills, this court is not a theater. We deal with facts. Dramatic claims will not overshadow evidence. You may continue when appropriate, but do not interrupt the court's process with mockery." Angela felt a surge of relief. Marcus wasn't just a judge, he was her ally. She continued, presenting the photos, the testimonies, and finally the videos from nearby traffic cameras. Every piece of evidence told the same story. Her brother had been stopped unnecessarily, escalated without reason, and the officers had failed to handle the situation professionally. Then came the part she had been preparing for months. She looked directly at Mills and Carter. "And yet," she said, her voice calm but piercing, "after all of this, one of you thought it was appropriate to humiliate me on the courthouse steps this morning. You poured hot coffee on me, hoping to intimidate or embarrass me. Did you think that would silence me?" The courtroom gasped. People whispered, some shocked, some impressed by her courage. Mills opened his mouth but shut it quickly, unsure of what to say. Carter's face turned red and he fidgeted with his papers. Judge Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "Miss Brooks, continue." Angela nodded. "Your Honor, I am not here for revenge. I am here for justice, and justice is not served when those responsible continue to act with impunity. Today, I ask this court to recognize not only the wrongful death of my brother, but also the culture of abuse and negligence that allowed it to happen. And I ask that accountability be enforced regardless of rank or badge." The courtroom remained silent, the tension palpable. Even the clerk leaned forward as if sensing the gravity of her words. Judge Marcus took a deep breath. "The court acknowledges the bravery of Ms. Brooks in presenting her case. These allegations are serious and demand careful review. Officer Mills, Officer Carter, you are expected to respond truthfully. There will be no mockery, no laughter, no diversion. This is a courtroom, not a playground. Carter shifted uncomfortably. Yes, Your Honor, he stammered. Mills said nothing, his hands clenched into fists on the table. Angela continued, her voice steadier now, strengthened by Marcus's support. The law exists to protect the innocent. My brother was innocent, and those who fail to uphold the law should face the consequences. Today, I present not only the evidence of his death, but also proof of the lack of accountability from the officers responsible. She held up a video, recording from her phone, recording she had discreetly captured. After the incident at the coffee shop, it showed Mills and Carter laughing, mocking her as she wiped the coffee from her clothes. The room fell completely silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a moment, stunned by the audacity of the officers and the courage of the woman who dared expose them. Judge Marcus's eyes locked on Mills and Carter. For the first time that day, their confidence faltered. The smug smiles disappeared. They realized that the courtroom was no longer a place where they could intimidate. They were exposed, cornered, and vulnerable under the law. Judge Marcus spoke slowly, deliberately. These actions are unacceptable. Humiliation of a civilian, especially by officers of the law, is a grave misconduct. The court will not overlook these actions. Your behavior this morning has been noted, and it will be taken into consideration during this trial. Mills swallowed hard, trying to form a response, but words failed him. Carter's shoulders slumped. Angela felt a swell of hope and empowerment. She had faced mockery, physical intimidation, and yet she stood here strong. And now, the law, represented by someone she trusted, was on her side. Then came the unexpected, the witness called to testify. A senior officer, one of Marcus's colleagues, stood nervously. Your Honor, I was present during the initial stop involving Mr. Brooks. The situation escalated quickly, and yes, some mistakes were made. I confirm that Ms. Brooks's brother's death was a result of misjudgment by the officers on duty. Angela's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Justice was inching closer. Judge Marcus nodded. Thank you for your honesty. This court values transparency. Officer Mills. Officer Carter, you will have a chance to respond. But be aware that falsehoods or deflection will only worsen your standing. Angela felt a strange calm wash over her. For the first time in months, she believed that her brother's death would not go unnoticed, that someone would truly hold the officers accountable. She glanced at Judge Marcus, who gave a subtle nod, a silent message of support. The trial continued for hours. Angela presented witnesses, medical records, and testimony from neighbors who had seen the incident unfold. Each statement was meticulously organized, precise, and compelling. By late afternoon, even the officers' defense began to crumble. Evidence contradicted their claims. Videos proved they had acted negligently. And Angela's calm, unwavering presentation of facts made it impossible to dismiss her case. At one point, Mills muttered under his breath, "She's going to ruin us." Carter shot him a worried glance. "We should have left her alone this morning." "That coffee? That was a mistake." Judge Marcus, overhearing the whisper, slammed his gavel lightly. This court hears all testimony. Any discussion outside of formal proceedings will not be tolerated. Angela took a deep breath. Her eyes scanned the room, her hands steady. She had faced humiliation, anger, grief, and fear, and now she was finally taking control. The courtroom had grown tense as the trial neared its climax. Angela Brooks stood by her table, papers neatly arranged, heart racing but her face calm. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and now it was time to face the consequences for the officers who had humiliated her and caused her brother's death. Judge Marcus leaned forward, fingers interlaced, eyes scanning the room. "We will now hear closing statements. Ms. Brooks, you may proceed." Angela stepped forward, taking a deep breath. Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened with emotion. "Your Honor, members of the court, what I present here is not just about my brother. It is about every family who has suffered due to negligence and abuse of power. My brother, Marcus Brooks, was an innocent man, unarmed, going about his life when his trust in the law was betrayed. And when I, as his sister, sought justice, I was humiliated. My dignity trampled by the very people sworn to protect the public." She held up a folder containing the video evidence from the courthouse coffee incident. "This recording is proof that intimidation and mockery are used to silence those who seek justice. Officer Mills and Officer Carter believed they could scare me, but instead, they exposed their own lack of accountability and humanity. The courtroom was silent. Even the public gallery seemed to hold its breath. Judge Marcus nodded. "Ms. Brooks, you may continue." Angela's voice grew firmer. "The law exists to protect citizens, not to punish the innocent. My brother deserved his life. My family deserved respect, and we deserved justice. I am asking this court not only to acknowledge the wrongful death of Marcus Brooks, but also to send a clear message. Abuse of power will not be tolerated." She looked directly at the two officers, who were pale, their smugness gone. Carter tried to shift in his seat, but his nervousness betrayed him. Mills stared straight ahead, jaw tight, fists clenched. "Your Honor," Angela continued, "justice is not about revenge. It's about accountability, and I have faith that the law will prevail." Judge Marcus's gaze softened slightly, then hardened. "Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Your statement is noted. Officers Mills and Carter, you will now present your defense." Mills rose, looking unsteady. "Your Honor, we followed procedure. We did what we were trained to do. Any mistakes were unintentional. The coffee incident was a misunderstanding." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Angela's lips pressed into a firm line. "Misunderstanding? You poured hot coffee on me to intimidate me. That is not a misunderstanding. That is misconduct." Judge Marcus raised a hand. "Order in the court. Officers, your responses will be taken into account, but any attempts at deflection will not go unnoticed." Carter spoke next, his voice shaky. "Your Honor, we regret the incident. It was never meant to harm anyone. We were stressed by the events of the day." Angela's eyes burned with controlled anger. "Your stress does not justify your actions. You humiliated me, laughed at me, and thought no one would notice. But the law sees everything." Judge Marcus leaned back, steepling his fingers. "This court has reviewed all evidence, witness statements, video recordings, and testimony. The actions of Officers Mills and Carter constitute gross negligence and misconduct." The courtroom was utterly silent. You could hear a pin drop. Even the officers' lawyers looked uneasy, realizing that the tide had turned decisively against their clients. Judge Marcus's voice rang out, firm and deliberate. "This court finds the city, police department liable for the wrongful death of Marcus Brooks. Officers Mills and Carter are personally responsible for misconduct, intimidation, and abuse of power. The court will impose the appropriate legal consequences." Mills's eyes widened. Carter's face went pale. They had expected some reprimand, maybe a minor fine or suspension. But the gravity of Marcus's words and the evidence presented left no room for leniency. Judge Marcus continued. "Furthermore, Ms. Angela Brooks has demonstrated extraordinary courage, persistence, and integrity in pursuing this case. Her actions today exemplify the very best of civic responsibility. The court acknowledges her resilience and determination." Angela felt a rush of relief and validation. Months of grief, humiliation, and struggle were finally being recognized. Her brother's death would not be ignored. The officers were asked to stand. Judge Marcus read aloud the specific consequences. Suspension from duty, mandatory, training on ethics and conduct, and referral to internal affairs for further investigation. Additionally, the court awarded a substantial settlement to Angela Brooks for the wrongful death of her brother and for the emotional distress caused by their actions. As the gavel came down, a wave of whispers spread across the courtroom. Many people in the gallery were visibly moved, some wiping away tears. Angela felt a hand on her shoulder. A colleague, a friend, someone who had supported her throughout this ordeal. "You did it," the friend whispered. "You finally got justice for him." Angela nodded, her own tears threatening to spill. "We did it. For Marcus." Mills and Carter were led away under supervision. They looked broken, humiliated in a way that mirrored how Angela had felt months ago. This time the law had turned the tables. Judge Marcus looked at Angela one final time. "This court is adjourned. Ms. Brooks, you have my respect and admiration. Your brother's memory will not be forgotten." Angela exhaled deeply. The weight she had carried for so long seemed to lift slightly. Justice had been served, not only for her brother, but for herself. The court had recognized her courage, her truth, and her fight. As she left the courtroom, the sunlight felt warmer, the air cleaner. People passed by, some offering congratulations, some simply nodding in acknowledgement. She realized that standing up, speaking the truth, and refusing to be silenced had made all the difference. Outside, reporters and cameras gathered. Angela smiled faintly, answering questions with calm confidence. "My brother deserved justice," she said, "and I will continue to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Today, the law stood with me, and I hope it stands with others who face injustice every day." A photographer snapped a picture. One reporter asked, "How do you feel now that the officers have been held accountable?" Angela's eyes glistened, relieved and hopeful. "It's not just about punishment. It's about setting a precedent. No one should be able to intimidate or abuse their power without consequences." As she walked away from the courthouse, she felt lighter, stronger. The world had not only witnessed her fight, but had also seen that courage. Truth and persistence could overcome fear, intimidation, and injustice. Judge Marcus, watching from the bench as the courtroom emptied, allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Today, the law had done what it was meant to do: protect the innocent, uphold justice, and remind everyone that no one, not even those in power, is above accountability. Angela looked at the sky, sunlight reflecting in her eyes, and whispered softly, "This is for you, Marcus. Justice is ours." And with that, she walked into a new chapter, one of hope, resilience, and the knowledge that speaking the truth, no matter how difficult, would always be worth it.